I'm guessing a lot of people who just clicked on this video just had a fall to sexual immorality. And before we get started, I just want to say that, you're okay. And you're saved by God's good grace and not your works. And in this video, I'm just gonna ramble a little bit about my story with prawn. YouTube doesn't like the words porn and all the other ones, so I'm gonna be saying prawn and ography for this video. Yeah, man. I first discovered it, prawn, when I was 13 years old, which, that might sound young, but that's actually average. The average age for men to discover it is 13, which, honestly, I'm lucky. There's a lot of studies that show the younger that you discover it, like between the ages of 5 and 8, the more likely you are to be abusive in your sexual relationship with your partner. And guys who discover it at 13 usually have the best outcomes, but it still negatively affects them in their life. But yeah, I discovered it pretty early on. And, when you hear statistics like that, the first thing in my head that comes up is like, what business does an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 13-year-old have knowing the full anatomy of a woman? And the answer to that is none, like zero. And I can speak to that personally because I remember when I first saw female genitalia, it traumatized me really bad because it was brand new, and I knew kind of innately that I shouldn't have been watching it in the first place, and that I couldn't take back what you've seen. You always remember it. You can't unsee something. And I remember the day after so clearly because of all the shame that I felt. I remember just carrying around the shame and not telling anybody because, you're 13. You don't want to tell your parents that you watched the thing that they would always cover your eyes for at the movies and stuff like that. And yeah, I remember just being like the pit in my stomach around my family because I knew something that they didn't, and they didn't know what I'd been watching, and it was just this ever-growing secret because I knew I was gonna go back. That's a horrible feeling, is when you make these vows to God, you promise that you're not gonna return to it, but you kind of know you are. You know you're capable of doing that, and you have. It's the worst feeling ever. And I don't know. It was such a hard time because at 13, I don't know about you guys, but I had no grip on my faith at all. I did not know who Jesus was. I didn't know that it's by his grace that you're saved. I think at that age, you kind of naturally have a works-based salvation. You think, oh, the good things I do save me. But this was especially weird because no one had ever talked about it. I grew up in a church environment, and I think it's like most church environments, unfortunately, where sex is just not discussed. No one brings it up, no one talks about their issues because there's so much embarrassment, so much shame. Everybody wants to be, the best they can be in front of their peers, especially at the church, and it's a dangerous thing. But yeah, it was never talked about, and I didn't know what I was doing at all, and it really scared me because I'd never heard of it. Very new feelings, and not trusting anybody. And it led me to start Googling the answer. I remember I started searching up is in detail being is this okay? Is this all right? And do I need medical help and stuff like that? And I found a bunch of questions on Quora, Reddit, all these message boards of kids who were just like me, who were hi, I'm 16, I'm 14, I'm 13, every time I would Google it, it would be in that age range. I'm doing this, is this okay? From a biblical standpoint. And every time I would just see these messages, these replies to these kids who were really seeking clarity and help from adults that would write these messages that are I've been a Christian for 47 years, you're fine, honey, it's totally okay. I remember this one specifically, and it was written by a woman. And she said that God wouldn't put something in you that caused you to stumble. And I was like, okay, well, this person's obviously older than me. they wouldn't lie to this other person, so I can take that as fact. God wouldn't put something in me to stumble, so what I'm doing is okay. And like, it just gave me full range to envelop myself in this lifestyle, in this world of just indulging every single impulse that I had, you know. And it bleeds into other things, because then you start eating whatever you want, you know, not working out because you don't feel like it. You get used to feeding the flesh, right, without even knowing it. And no, like, I never knew the consequences of this. Like, even people who aren't Christians agree that ography has really negative effects on you long term. There's so many websites and universities that have done studies on it, and it's just like the resounding evidence that it's not good for you is staggering. You know, like, your brain doesn't even react indifferently to it. It's purely negative. And there's some crazy articles. I remember, like, because wanting this sin to be okay in my life at that time, I would purposely seek out the positive ones. There was one that's like, why men should, you know, ejaculate 31 times a month according to science, and like, it alleviates headaches and it'll reduce stress and all this other stuff that's supposedly beneficial. But no one ever brought up the consequences of like social isolation, social problems, you know, not being able to communicate with people, not being able to have a conversation with a woman without you contemplating how this could turn sexual, you know, objectifying people, objectifying everybody, a lower sex drive, but like a really distorted view of what the people are for, you know. Like, that goes back to objectification. Like, just objectifying people down to your base desires is such a gross feeling, because I mean, I don't think I have to answer why, because it just is. It's like, no one wants to be objectified, and who would want to objectify people, you know? And it was so scary. I remember, like, just truly not knowing anything, and like, I didn't read my Bible at all, so I had no knowledge of like what Solomon writes about sexual morality and immorality, and what it's like to live the godly lifestyle and to avoid that sin. And you know, I don't want this video to come off like I'm just barking at the world to be like, stop watching ography, you know, and prawn and stuff like that. So it's hard to remember, but gotta keep this video monetized. But yeah, I don't want this to come off like I'm just some angry person who had a bad life experience and is now projecting that onto everybody. I only have sympathy in my heart for people that struggle with this, because you just want to be happy. It's a fight for happiness, and I know what it's like to come home from work, from school, and just feel all this pressure and this isolation, the overwhelming isolation. And the lie that ography will feed you is that it'll make you feel loved. It'll improve your sex life. This is a back door into getting relief, you know, for all this stuff. Like I listed, all the relieves headaches and you know, it improves your mood and blah, blah, blah. It's a lie. It's a lie, because it hurts you in so many ways that you can't see, and it kills love. And man, I don't know, but it truly almost ended my walk with Christ, because this is important to be honest with yourself, is to consider, it's like, do I love this more than I love God? And for a while, the answer to that question was, yeah, I did. And as harsh as that is to say to yourself and to have that level of honesty, I encourage you, like, if you're watching this, to ask yourself now, it's like, do I love this more than Christ? And I think most people who are addicted will say yes to that. And it's scary, because you know not to reject God. You know all the laws and the rules of the Bible of how you're supposed to treat him with the reverence and the glory that he deserves. But once you do this, at least in my life, I saw instant improvements of faith, of humanity, and starting to have that prayer relationship that David talks about, where you can just be honest and be like, Lord, I'm sorry, but I love this more than you. Change my heart. I want to be made the person that you want, you know? And I hope that made sense right there, but you want to be molded into the person that God wants. You want to desire the things that God desires, you know? And yeah, man, it's a tough sin, it really is, because even though I get to make these videos for Salt and I get to talk about this, I still have my bad days. Like yesterday was horrible for me. And I've been putting off making this video because I want it to be at a time when I'm doing really good. You know, and it's easy to get into that mindset of like, oh, I've been abstaining from the sin for like 3 months, so I'm more qualified of the kingdom of heaven. It's not true. You're saved by Christ and only by his blood. It's not your works. Just because you've done better in the past couple months doesn't mean you're saving yourself. And that's an important one to be vigilant about, is the pride when doing well, because it's always when I get prideful that I fall the hardest. And your sin does not disqualify you from helping out other people. So I hope this encouraged you. Like I said, it was kind of just me rambling. I would like to make more videos like this. So if you liked it, please, show your love down below. Hit like, subscribe to Salt for more content like this. Leave a comment. I would love to take this discussion further, and I will see you guys in the next one.